Hello again, mathematicians. Welcome back to R11 Math Now podcast. In the last episode, we talked a little bit about the way we talk about ourselves and our students. And then today we're kind of building on that. But first, Kelsie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. This is my first time on a podcast ever.
Whoa!
Here we go. So exciting. So yeah, my name is Kelsie Johnson Lumadue, and I'm an instructional content coach here at Region 11. And I focus a lot on early childhood learning and elementary math.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. And I'm Caitlin Cook. I'm a K-5 math content coach here at ESC Region 11. And we're excited you're joining us today.
Yeah.
All right, so in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about finding student strengths. And I kind of want to reflect on a cycle that we typically see in schools. Okay. I know whenever I was in the classroom, this is what it looked like. Kind of that assessment cycle, right? So we would go through assess a computational skill, identify a weakness, build some interventions, test them again, and then just keep going through that process.
Right. And maybe not changing up student groups very often because they're just, that's where they are.
The computer telling me that they're at this learning level, and so that's the group that they fall in, and sometimes we would see kind of the rotation that way.
Right. And I'm just going to stick with that because that's what the test said. That's what the computer said.
And so as I was doing some research, I feel like my thinking really got pushed, and as far as what is this actually showing me that my students know how to do? What do they know how to do? Mm-hmm. What is their strengths? Mm-hmm. How can I find these strengths?
So kind of looking beyond the typical assessment?
Yes, because when you have an assessment where it's 10 questions, multiple choice, we see this a lot. I know I did it when I was in the classroom. Sometimes you can glean data from that, but you might not actually find student strengths there.
Well, and a lot of what you see there is a right or wrong, right? You're not able to actually, unless you really dig deep into the paper copies, study the work that they showed or what they did.
If they showed work.
If they showed work, right? Because that's a whole other battle. But just getting to the root of what they truly know.
Okay. And so as we kind of dive into that and start thinking about what kind of things can we put in front of a student, or can we have a discussion about that would actually show what the student knows, what they're thinking, actually allow them to learn as they're showing work. So would you like to jump into maybe your favorite way to see student thinking?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my favorite ways to see and hear student thinking in the elementary classroom is through number talks, and this can take on it can look a lot of different ways, right? But basically it's presenting a problem to students, and it can be something as simple as an algorithm problem shown to them, or really any math topic that you want to cover again or want to dig into their thinking, and giving them some time to process what they see, right, before kids start shouting out the answer, and then starting to have that strategic, collaborative conversation about what they see, what they notice, and how they might solve the problem. So what this allows students to do is voice and really explain deeply their understanding of how to solve the problem. And the reason I like this is because it's pretty accessible to all students, because if I'm just asking questions like, what do you notice about this problem? One student might say, well, I notice it's 197 minus 73. That's a noticing. That tells me, okay, they're on track with place value. They know what the problem is asking them to do.
They can verbalize the number. They can read the number.
Right. And I'm working a lot with the littlest students, so it's that would be something that I would want to see in those lower grades. But you can kind of tailor it to whatever your students need to practice, or what you want to check in on their strengths with. Number talks are quick, and you can make them a part of your daily routine, so it's not this burden to, okay, I'm going to give this assessment, I'm going to get all this data, track all this data. It's really more of just a habit that you build for yourself and your students, so that they have a chance to talk about problem solving and really voice their understanding. Yeah, that's a good way to see strengths. That's probably my favorite way.
I think so too. And from participating in and watching several numeracy routines, it's easy to see that if you are a student that's operating at a concrete level, like there's a way for you to enter into that, as well as if you are still working with representations, or even if you're kind of more in the abstract side of the thinking. And there's really ways to bridge back and forth between and just deepen that understanding for all students in the classroom.
Yep, definitely. Because as I'm leading a number talk, right, I'm annotating whatever student is explaining their thinking. So that helps build everyone's understanding as I'm putting into print what the student is verbalizing, right? And then there was another piece of that.
I know that like when I started participating in some numeracy routines and number talks as an educator, at first I was when I would participate in it myself, like, okay, I'm just going to do this like the most obvious way that I can think of to do it. And then the more time I've spent like participating in those things, I noticed how my thinking was different. I would kind of challenge myself, like, is there a more interesting way that I can answer this? Or is there a way that I don't think maybe someone else would come up with? Or how does my way connect to what that person just said? And so I really noticed the flexibility in my thinking around the mathematics was shifting over time.
Yes. So 3 things that number talks can do, right? They can help with flexibility. They can help students see that you can solve the same problem, 5, 10 different ways. Accuracy, right? We want to make sure they're getting to the right answer. And then efficiency. We want to make sure that they're getting to the right answer and in an efficient way, right? So if they're doing a multiplication problem, we probably don't want to see them drawing like 15 circles with 3 dots in each. There's a different way to solve that's more efficient.
And that can reveal itself without you explicitly as the teacher having to say, hey, that's not the quickest way for you to do this, and you need to do it X way.
Yes, it's a lot of collaborative conversation and collaborative learning that takes place. And I found that it helps build student confidence quite a bit, just because of the accessibility that it gives all students. So yeah, definitely my favorite way to find student strengths. What about you?
I love that way. Yeah, so I really have been enjoying participating in and looking through various rich math tasks. I think it's sometimes can be a challenge to find a rich math task to fit what your concept is. But once you do, once you know what you're kind of looking for that, it really requires that all students engage, or it to facilitate a good one, you want to have a task that allows all students to engage. Therefore, they have several entry points into the problem or situation. They can represent it however they know to do. And then same thing, kind of once you've participated in the math task, the students can kind of have those collaborative conversations and build their understanding with other students. Have you participated in any recent ones that you've noticed anything?
I have, and what I love about rich math tasks is getting students to that point of productive struggle, right? You don't want them to get to that frustrational point where they just are like ready, or they do just give up and like can't do this. But to that point where, wow, this is really difficult, but they are able to lean on their peers and kind of collaborate and figure it out together.
Yes.
For people who haven't heard of rich math tasks before, should we back up and like kind of describe what that is or what it looks like?
Yes, definitely. The attributes of a rich math task are that it's accessible to all learners. That means they have some context, background, and multiple entry points into the situation or problem. Multiple strategies can be elicited, so if they're working concretely, they can do representations. They may also be using algorithms. It's also purposeful with connections to representations, and there should be some connections between the context and the process standards. So I want to give you a little example of what I'm talking about, because that might be a little hard to process. One example here is that Ruth has a set of shapes. Okay. And she says that the shape with the most sides also has the most lines of symmetry. So you would have several shapes in front of you, and it says that lowest disagrees. So the question that students could be presented with is, who is correct and how do you know? So we like this because it allows students to show their understanding and explain their understanding. So that is showing us more of what they actually know about the math versus if we just said A, B, C, D answer choice, pick which one has the most lines of symmetry with the various shapes. So that's one of the reasons that I really like the rich math task, is because I think teachers are kind of used to those A, B, C, D word problem things. And so this is kind of a nice shift. A lot of those problems can easily be transformed into a rich math task.
Definitely, easily transformed. And I noticed a lot of similarities between the rich math tasks and what we already talked about with number talks, right? So it's like accessible to many students. I love the term low floor, high ceiling, right? So it's like low floor, which like, what's a low floor? Meaning I envision like a ramp, right? Like any student can enter the space easily. High ceiling, they can go as high as they want to, as high as they possibly can.
So truly for all learners in your classroom.
Right. And then the multiple strategies represented, that reminds me of the flexibility that we're looking to see or hoping to see during a number talk. So really, both of these are rooted in that collaborative conversation and the critical thinking piece that we're pushing our students to get to through these activities, really.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit, touch on what some student strengths that students could be showing you through these activities.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I have here in my strength-based teaching and learning in mathematics 5 teaching turnarounds for grades K through 6.
Lovely
and
book.
This is by Beth, Kobett, and I know I referenced this last podcast episode, but such good stuff. And Karp is also the other author.
We read this as like a little internal book club a few months ago.
Yeah.
So
and you can tell that I really enjoyed it because my book is thoroughly marked up, and it's great stuff. But student strengths can be a ton of different things, right? It could be that they persevere, they take risks, they ask good questions, they just listen to others' ideas. They like working independently. That can be a strength. Some other content areas that they can show you are like understanding of that concept. They might show use of number sense. They might have graph sense. They might have great spatial awareness. They may be really good at visual mathematics, so working with representations. They may have a good understanding of their basic math facts. So these are all areas that we can be looking for those student strengths. And is there any other student strengths that are your favorites to look for?
Well, one of those that you said just really stuck with me, and I guess it was like a section of them that have to do with a student's just overall attitude or disposition. You know, they persevere, they know how to take risks,
they just enjoy math. That's a strength.
Ask questions, right. But in the persevering and the risk taking, that can transcend across any content area as well. So what I love about that is thinking about our students that maybe do have low confidence in math, and how can we build up those strengths that maybe aren't specific to math specifically, but building up those strengths so that they can use that perseverance, use that risk-taking, use the questions to tackle some of these rich math tasks or other like difficult kind of topics or questions that we're asking them.
This kind of makes me think back to the last episode and going into like a strengths-based approach to ourselves and our students, and coming in with that kind of that confidence that you can look at yourself and come up with a strength in that area, right? So I have a challenge for the week.
What's our challenge?
An R11 math challenge. And this one is to choose one student in your classroom and list as many strengths as you can about that student. So I really would like to challenge,
I'm going to push you on that. And it's like, pick maybe not, because some of our students, let's just be like super clear, some of our students, it's really easy to make a list a mile long of their strengths, right?
This is where I was going to go.
Maybe don't pick that obvious student that's easy to make that list of strengths that's a mile long.
Maybe pick a student with some lower confidence in the mathematics and try to, how can we build them up? We really need to find those strengths to foster those.
A student that you're looking for their strengths, You need to find them to help that student build up. And yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We can do that.
Let's do it.
I mean,
Kelsey, one
I
of
don't
your
have-
strengths is as a
Oh.
communicator. You're very innovative.
Oh, wow.
You do a great job of recording your ideas. Those are some good strengths that I just came up with off the top of my head.
Well,
for you.
thanks, Caitlin. Caitlin is the organizer that keeps our whole team together with all of our plans. So I'm thankful for Caitlin's strength of organization. But yeah, I hope that you guys who are listening in the audience think about how you can think about those student strengths, and really, this is something you can get your students involved in as well, right? I've seen students as young as kinder, first grade, they love to talk about what they're good at. And it's even more important when they get into those upper grades and their brains are really developing, and maybe they do start to feel confident in one subject area and maybe not so confident in another subject area. So just how can we help them see their own strengths across the board? So,
All right. Thanks for joining me.
of course.
All right.
Thanks.